Good evening, everyone. I'm Lissy Bastian. It's Monday, January 20th. It's great having you back with us. There is no degradation of bodies kept in a cooler on Abaco. In fact, the Ministry of Health in a recent statement vigorously refuted what they called baseless and inaccurate assertions made in a widely circulated video posted on social media and statements by the Member of Parliament for Engliston, Glenys Hannah Martin. This past weekend, Mrs. Hannah Martin, in a statement, said the reported scores of bodies of victims of Hurricane Dorian being stored in a container is a scandalous disgrace, and said that the government, in response to Hurricane Dorian, is a disgrace and inhumane, as she says bodies have been thawing due to inadequate cooling, resulting in a stench. Well, Kai Mills, a local government representative on Abaco, when contacted by JCN's news team, said he has witnessed the stench and flies, as well as issues with the electricity supply to the container that houses the victim of Hurricane Dorian. 70 of the bodies, according to Mr. Mills. He also claims that the health minister has not visited Abaco since 2 weeks post-Hurricane Dorian. Well, Health Minister Dr. Dwayne Sands gave us this update.
All would have traveled to Marsh Harbor, Abaco, and would have personally inspected the situation. They did not detect any foul odor. There were no significant issues with flies. The temperature in the trailer was minus 10 degrees. They verified that the trailer was locked. They verified that BPL power is in service. The trailer is connected to the mini hospital power supply. The standby generator is operational. And the trailer also has backup power.
Dr. Sands says he is not minded to go back and forth with issues, adding that Mr. Mills is looking for notoriety by his post. As for Mr. Mills' claims that he has only been to Abaco since the storm, Dr. Sands says this.
I have been in Abaco, I think, 7 times since the storm. Separate trips. If it's not 7, it's 6. Okay? I don't know how Mr. Mills could make such a ridiculous assertion. But I'm happy if you WhatsApp me, and maybe I can find some pictures of me in Abaco.
The ministry says there are remains of 51 deceased persons being stored in the refrigerated cooler. The statement goes on that the claim of a stench, fresh or old remnants of bodily fluids at or around the trailer, and suggestion that there are unusually large populations of flies attracted to the trailer are pathetic falsifications. The statement added that the people of Abaco have suffered tremendously, and the insensitive and reckless false claims add to their pain and suffering. The ministry says at least one of the persons should know better and seek confirmation before affirming misinformation. Well, in a quick response, Mrs. Hannah Martin says it's ironic that the ministry would refer to the suffering experienced by the people of Abaco in seeking to chastise her, while Health Minister Dr. Dwayne Sands appears to have no sense of urgency in addressing the scores of bodies stored in that refrigerated container. She added that he must know that this state of affairs is a constant gruesome reminder to the people of Abaco and no doubt exacerbates their sufferings. Mrs. Hannah Martin continued that the minister should be aware that the facts she provided are from a source that she trusts, despite his official stance, and says this is yet another example of this administration straining the truth to avert transparency in a public relations exercise. She reiterated her call for immediate, dignified, and respectful removal of these remains. The government is getting a mouthful from opposition leader Philip Davis in response to the recent announcement by Bahamas Power and Light's chairman, Dr. Donovan Moxey, that the power company intends to sell its station A and D at Clifton Pier to Shell North America. In a statement over the weekend, Mr. Davis said there is no coherent plan or vision for BPL, and given the statements by the chairman of the company, it appears that without the leave of the Bahamian people through Parliament, the FNM has unilaterally decided that they are going to give the power generation portion of the company to a foreign entity. Mr. Davis contends that this is not a policy that the Free National Movement campaigned on, adding that the government was never given a public mandate to do so. The statement goes on that the plans left in place by the previous administration were scrapped and purportedly replaced with nothing more than a memorandum of understanding with Shell North America to construct a 200 megawatt power generation station at their cost in exchange for a power purchasing agreement. Mr. Davis says the public then witnessed the implosion of the board with accusations of political interference and corruption stemming no doubt from the government's decision to enter into another agreement that conflicted with the Shell MOU. Mr. Davis says in this competing agreement, Wärtsilä constructed 100 megawatts power generating stations at Bahamian's cost without any explanation as to what was to become of the Shell deal. Now, Mr. Davis says the public is now broadsided with this sale of power plant, leading Bahamians to ask what is going on. Mr. Davis says supposed changes at BPL have deepened the mistrust, heightened the uncertainty, and worsened the loss of public confidence in the power company. He says Shell North America should be careful before entering into this transaction and is calling on the government to come clean and do so without delay. Progressive Liberal Party Chairman and former Member of Parliament for Fox Hill, Fred Mitchell, is lamenting the condition of the Fox Hill Community Centre, criticizing the current Member of Parliament for the area, Chanel Ferguson, for what he believes is her failure to maintain the facility. He says the community pool remains unusable by the children of Fox Hill and the fencing surrounding the pool is dilapidated.
This pool has now been allowed to go green. And I'm told that the Member of Parliament said last evening on the news that the reason it was allowed to go green was because there were evacuees from the Abacos and Grand Bahama in this building. The problem is, first of all, that's not true. But secondly, the evacuees left here in October. The pool is still green. The children can't use the swimming pool. But what's even worse is they allowed this fence. She's allowed this fence to fall down.
He says the government has not honored its agreement for the maintenance of the multipurpose complex.
When we left office, we left in place a contract for the maintenance of the pool and the maintenance of the building. This government refused to carry out that contract. And that's the reason why the pool is green. So she shouldn't come with no story about evacuees, because it had nothing to do with that. It was her action or lack of action that caused this pool to be the way it is.
He gives the Fox Hill MP this recommendation.
And all I'm saying is two things. Fix the fence so there are no liability issues. And secondly, get the pool back up and running so the kids in this area can use the pool again.
After the passage of Hurricane Dorian, the center became a shelter housing evacuees affected by the storm. Member of Parliament for the area, Chanel Ferguson, said in October that the center faced a sewage problem due to the large number of people housed at the facility. But Mr. Mitchell protested that the center was not meant to deal with the long-term sheltering of people. When Jones Communications news team visited the center, it was empty of evacuees, but had two women who managed the facility. There were no computers in the computer lab situated upstairs, and a room downstairs contained what was left of hurricane supplies like water and drinks for the evacuees it once housed. The facility has become a point of contention for both political parties because of its lease agreement, as the Fox Hill Center is privately owned and governed by an independent board of directors. The property on which the facility stands was acquired by the late George Mackey. The facility was built in 2017 under the Progressive Liberal Party with assistance from the Inter-American Development Bank and its Citizen Security Program. JCN's news team attempted to reach out to Fox Hill Member of Parliament for a response, but was unsuccessful up to news time. You're watching JCN News. Stay with us.
This segment of the news was brought to you by Alive.